In this video, I'm conducting an interview with my good friend, Chris Bray. Thank you for joining me. I hope you enjoy this video. Please like and subscribe, and you'll be notified every time I upload a new video. Let me know what you think in the comments below and what you'd like to see in future videos, and I'll work on it. With the membership feature, you can get exclusive access to the most popular videos. My book, Backgammon, Backgame Strategies, is available. There's a link in the description to where you can get it. And if you're interested in lessons, please contact me via email. My email address is also in the description. Again, in this video, it's my great pleasure to welcome back my good friend Chris Bray by way of introduction. For those that follow Backgammon, he really needs no introduction. Been a prolific backgammon author for many years, in the scene for decades, based out of the UK. Hello, Chris.
Good evening, Alex. How are
Good
you
evening.
doing?
Very
Yeah.
good. Thank you for asking. How are you?
I'm alive and well considering I've been playing backgammon for so long. Yeah.
You have? Well, that's good. That's good. Um, Thank you for accommodating me. I know it's late where you are. It's a pleasure to have you back. I'm excited to talk about you and backgammon. If I may, I'd like to start with a little bit of background biographical information. Can you please tell us where you were born and raised?
Oh, yes, I can. So, now I was born somewhere that nobody in America will ever have heard of, which is called West Hartlepool, which is in the extreme northeast top of the United Kingdom. The town that you will know is Newcastle, which is quite close. But actually, I only lived there for 6 weeks. And my parents then moved south to just outside London, where I lived until I was three. And one of my first memories is actually departing from there to move to Manchester, which is where I spent my formative years. I lived there until I was 11. I should have gone to Manchester Grammar School, but very inconveniently, my father died quite young. And for reasons that are vastly complex, I ended up going to what we call public school and what you call private school. Um, but my allegiance is to Manchester, and hence I am a Manchester United supporter, be that good or ill.
It's
So I went to private school. I ended up at University College London, where I read maths. I didn't do a great deal of maths, but I had a great time. I played chess, I played bridge, and after that, I got through my 3 years at university, got a degree, went off to work for ICL, which is the UK equivalent of IBM, and spent most of my working life in IT one way or the other, starting off very technically and becoming a very sort of salesy type person by the end of it. And I did a lot of lecturing and teaching all over the world for IBM, who I joined and worked for the last 15 years of my working life. That's the biographical bit. In terms of backgammon, I didn't really come across backgammon much until I was about 25. I was playing chess quite seriously in London leagues and representing my county. My then girlfriend, now my wife of many years, introduced me to backgammon. I thought, this is a bloody stupid game, right? I'm not going to do this, right? And so it stayed for a year or two after I learned how to play. And then late one night, I was testing some software, and in those days, it took 2 hours every time you made a change to a software program, and we had nothing to do, and we were working through the night. Someone challenged me to a game of backgammon. I said, my girlfriend taught me how to play that. Oh, let's have a game. And he said, well, let's play for 50 cents a point, or 50p, as we say. And I lost £10, and I wasn't
What?
going to have that. So the next day I went out and bought Joe Dweck's Backgammon for Profit and the Backgammon book by Jacoby and Crawford. I read the book twice, got my money back in within a week, and then gave up chess and bridge and played backgammon, and that has been the story for the last 40 years.
It sounds incredibly similar to another story I heard from Bill Roberti. He was playing chess and then he got introduced to backgammon, I think, in some different way, but then like he almost quit chess and just played backgammon. He's been doing that for decades, like yourself. Well, great. I'm glad that was one of my questions too, how you got into backgammon. Excited to talk a lot about backgammon, but before we do that, do you have any other hobbies outside of backgammon?
I played golf for many years. I played lots of sport. I mean, I played tennis, I played squash, I played golf for many, many years. My back's currently a bit of a problem, so I'm playing croquet, which you may or may not have come across in Los Angeles. But it's a very genteel English game which requires less pressure on the back. But it's like playing snooker or pool on grass, if you like.
I see.
So, yeah, we do that. And then I have a family, of course. I have one daughter. She's now 36. And I will just have my first, she gave birth to our first granddaughter nearly a year ago, and I've got another one coming along in March next year. So it's a balance between work, play, family, like everybody should be, I guess. My wife will tell you I spend too much time playing backgammon, both online and offline. So that's the way it goes, yeah.
Yeah,
But I mean, to go
congratulations.
back to your earlier point, I mean, Magriel gave up chess to play backgammon.
Right?
Roberti gave up chess to play backgammon, and that was because backgammon was unsolved. So whereas chess was deeply immersed in theory and you had to spend hours and hours studying it if you want to get any better, you finally come to the realization you can't get any better, right? There are certain limitations that your mind imposes upon you, whereas backgammon was a fresh field of study. So like Roberti, like Magriel, I migrated to backgammon without really knowing a great deal about it. And I think my peers knew very little about it as well. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. Congratulations on the grandchildren. That's a lot of
Yeah.
fun. And now, are you still working or you're retired?
Uh, so I retired from IBM in 1960, sorry, 2012. Um, and at that point, I was not sure what I was going to do. And I started a one-man IT consultancy, so I worked freelance for a bit. A friend of mine had a company that was in trouble. I offered to do a 6-week study. I ended up becoming CEO for 3 years. That was in the e-commerce field. I still do a little bit of IT consultancy, mainly as a one-man band, helping older people, people even older than I am, to understand the world in which they live, and some of them have vast problems doing that. So 2 or 3 hours a week I'll spend doing that. The rest of it is backgammon, basically.
We call them mature people.
We do indeed. Yeah.
We actually have a lot of mature people playing backgammon. One of the questions I was going to ask is how do you think we can get more people playing backgammon? In particular, I like to kind of focus on underrepresented demographics such as youth and women, but in general, what do you think are ways that we can get more people to play the game?
Well, that's been a lifelong question. So in essence, if you look at poker, so poker was a nothing game. Well, it wasn't a nothing game, but it had the World Series of Poker, and 200 people turned up every year and sold off to Las Vegas and played in the World Poker Championships. And it became a very different game once the cameras could fill the whole film the whole cards, right? So the man in the street could get a much better view of poker. Poker is also intrinsically much more understandable and easy to follow than backgammon. So various people have tried to bring backgammon to the big screen over the years, and it's just too difficult for the man in the street. So without, being intellectually sort of taking a high position, it's an apparently simple game, but actually it has great depth, which was one of the comments Magriel made several times during his lifetime. And I honestly don't know how you can get more people to understand it and love it. So it's a bit like the other game I used to play, squash. If you played squash, watching squash is great. If you play backgammon, watching backgammon is great. But getting people who don't understand it to watch it is actually quite difficult because they really just don't quite understand what's going on. So if you think about last year and the Queen's Gambit on Netflix, that did a wonderful job for chess. We need the equivalent for backgammon. A friend of mine called Andy Bell did a whole TV series on backgammon, and it was a fantastic program, but it didn't capture the wider audience that he set out to capture. Yeah. And if you talk about children, well, there are far too many other things for the youth of today to get involved in. So, Fortnite becomes an overnight sensation. There'll be another online game around next week where you can kill 1 million people doing stuff. Backgammon has moved from being a gambling game to an intellectual mind game, and I'm not quite sure where the transition happened, but there's far less gambling than there ever used to be, and far more interest in it as an intellectual pursuit. And then it reaches the realms of chess and probably bridge. Bridge has never made it either. So there are many more bridge players than backgammon players, and some of those are young, which is a testament maybe to bridge. There are not enough young people playing backgammon. We try to encourage the youth of today to play, but I'm not quite sure what the answer is, I'm afraid, because I and many other people have tried. Yeah.
Yes, yes. I've spoken to actually many people about this, and some of the interesting things I've heard is like, as you mentioned, one person told me when they published or released the Queen's Gambit, the number of people that played on chess.com or whatever website it is increased significantly. So some sort of documentary may help. I've also spoken with Mochi, who has gone to schools and taught children or youth or teenagers, and that's helped. And I spoke with him about possibly making like a video series so that that can be available on the internet so everyone around the world can watch it as opposed to one person going to a school. And the other thing that's been new is like with the advent of social media in the last 10 years or 20 years or so, I've seen a lot of these social clubs, in particular via Instagram, where you get like many youth in their 20s and 30s, and like usually more than 50% of them are women, and it's almost like a dating thing. It's like you go and meet people and play, and they get hundreds of people.
Yeah. And certainly that's one way of doing it. I mean, I've taught a little bit in schools. I taught chess in schools, and it all helps. You need something groundbreaking, though, to change the current direction, if you like. So you need the best pro-am tournament in the world, maybe. You need a scandal, yeah? Uh,
Yeah.
Anything that grabs the public's attention, yeah? So you may not know this, but 50 years ago, the most famous or infamous backgammon player ever was Lord Lucan, who killed his nanny thinking it was his wife. And he was a high level, high stakes gambler. And he disappeared on the night he killed his nanny and has never been seen since. And in about a month's time, the BBC is running a documentary on Lucan, going over all the old ground and what he used to do with all his gambling friends. Yeah? And the people of like Aspinall and James Goldsmith, the high rolling, high gambling stakes crowd. People like Victor Lowndes are around, and Hugh Hefner and so on. It needs a little bit of pizzazz. It needs a bit of scandal, and it needs a Queen's Gambit. But someone's got to find the way of doing it. Yeah.
Yeah, I believe I remember you may have told that story or perhaps a similar story in one of your videos.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think people need to find an interest in backgammon. For you personally, what do you find most interesting about playing backgammon?
I view it really as it's to me, it's an intellectual pursuit. I want to get better and better, despite being quite old now. And hopefully, I do. It's the one thing that's happened over the 40 years that I've played is that I've always been able to improve a little bit most years, and that isn't true of that many games. So I love watching backgammon. I love listening to commentary, and I love commentating. And with the very best commentators in the world, you can learn a huge amount by listening to videos on YouTube. But it's I was always a mathematician. There are probably 3 fundamental skills in backgammon. So if you're no good at arithmetic, you can never be a great backgammon player. Yeah, you can be a good backgammon player, but you'll never be a great backgammon player. Yeah, the application of formulae, maybe done by Trice initially and others, are hugely beneficial to top class players. And without that, you can't be good. You need to be able to count quickly if you're playing live backgammon. And I was born with that. So I make no claim to having developed it as a skill. My genetics mean that I can count incredibly quickly. The only person I know can count more quickly than I is Jürgen Granstedt. So we were doing a commentary in, I think, in Cyprus together, and we reached a tricky, quite a long race. And I said, Jürgen, you do black, I'll do white. And I was halfway getting to white's count of 135 or whatever it was. And Jürgen said, don't bother, Chris, it's 137, 142. And I said, Jürgen, how the hell can you do that quickly? And he said, I don't know, the numbers just pop into my mind. So,
Yeah, I mean, I'm pretty fast too, but I met a lot of fast people. What do you use like cluster counting techniques
no,
or?
I just count. Take the number of points, multiply by the number of checkers on it, and quickly add it up.
Well,
And I can still do that. So that's a skill. But backgammon is about pattern recognition and knowing when the pattern has varied from something you know. And you can't, again, that's another issue with making backgammon very popular. You can't become a good backgammon player very quickly because you have to have a huge library of positions in your mind. You may not know you've got those positions in your mind, but types in actual positions rarely repeat except endings and openings, but types of positions constantly repeat. And if you don't have the broad experience of having played 10,000 games, you're going to make mistakes. Right? And backgammon, and that's another issue about backgammon, is it's largely about avoiding mistakes. If you look at a chess match and you look at the annotation, you get exclamation marks for good moves. In backgammon, you get penalized for blunders. You rarely get applauded for good moves. It's just that, oh yeah, XG said that was okay, so well done, you know. So it's a sort of negative analysis most of the time, so that's quite difficult to explain to people. But every time you play, you learn. There are many ways of learning. You can have lessons, you can read books, you can play, which you have to do. And you have to combine all of those, you know, to become a good backgammon player, and you have to put in the hours. You know? We're into Malcolm Gladwell's 10,000 hours concept here. You know,
right.
to become world class at anything, you have to do 10,000 hours. I believe that's true of backgammon. I've done my 10,000 hours, by the way. But
Oh yeah.
you have to do 10,000 structured hours. So we can all drive, right? And many of us have done 10,000 hours of driving, but we're not Formula One drivers because it's all arbitrary and random. The more learning and teaching you absorb that is structured, the quicker you will learn. Yeah. So it's not easy, believe me.
Yes, yes. I remember you had mentioned that in one of your videos on your YouTube channel,
Yeah.
which we'll get to. But one of the things that you're probably most well known for is your writing. You're one of the most prolific authors in backgammon. So I wanted to get a chance to discuss that. How did you first get into writing about backgammon?
Okay, so many years ago, there was a club called the Double Fives in London, and that was run by George and Diana Stilemersky. George sadly departed during COVID, but not of COVID. Diana's still around, and I see her sort of every other Tuesday when we play at the Fulham Backgammon Club. So we're now going back best part of 40 years. Books were around, but they weren't that great. And we're in the land of the hand rollout. Okay, so if you didn't know what the answer to position was, you jotted down the position, you went home, you rolled it out 36, 72, 144 times until you got an idea of what was going on. It was, of course, a statistically irrelevant sample, but it gave you some idea. And then for the key positions of the chouette each week that had led to really big arguments, I would analyze those, and then I'd do a 2-page sort of write-up of those and then hand them out to the guys the next week. So that was a bit of a freebie, a bit of fun. I've always been pretty good at writing because I did that for IBM. I got good grades in that in college, and I love writing and I love reading. Yeah, so that was fine. And then one day, and I have no idea why, I thought, you know, I think someone had written an article on the state of chess, and it had been published in a newspaper. And I thought, well, why don't we do that for Backgammon? So I wrote an article, basically called Quo Vadis Backgammon, saying where are we, where are we going, what's happening. And I wrote that, and I sent it off to 4 newspapers. At the Times, the Telegraph, the Independent, and one other, I can't remember the other one. And I heard not a word did I get. And I thought, well, you know, stuff you, I don't care. I've written it, it's out there. And then about 4 months after I'd written it, a guy at the Independent newspaper gave me a call and said, you know, I've just found this at the bottom of my intro and it's really rather interesting. So we'll publish it. And I said, well, that's very nice. And he said, we'll pay you. And I thought, Jesus, that's good. And they paid me £150, I think. And at that point, the Independent, which was a London newspaper, was quite young, and they didn't have a games page. But the guy who was the editor said, "Well, you know, write a few more. We'll publish one every couple of months," and they did. And then a guy called Bill Hartston, who was a chess grandmaster, became the games editor. And I knew Bill from chess, so he said, "Oh, hello, nice to see you. Let's make it fortnightly." And I said, "Oh, that's good. Yeah, we'll do that." And then it became weekly. Yeah? And it was published every week in the Independent. The only exception that ever occurred was on the weekend weekend after Princess Diana died, when the whole newspaper was devoted to her. But other than that, I didn't miss a day. And so that went on for 22 years. Yeah, and that
Wow.
was the source of many of my books because they're anthologies of the articles for the newspaper. Then the newspaper decided to become digital, and they ditched the print version and they said, sorry, we're deleting the games page. So, well, you know, I've had a good run, that's fine. Meanwhile, I've been writing to the Times, which is the paper I read and one I really wanted to write for, once a year, just to keep them aware of the fact that I was alive. After the demise of the Independent, I wrote to them again, and I said, I'm still alive, and do you need a backgammon column? And they said, well, yeah, no, we know you're alive, thank you very much, but no, yeah. And then a little while later, well, actually about a year later, they sacked the chess correspondent, Ray Keane, for plagiarism. Which, considering he was a grandmaster, he had no need to do, and I have no idea what he was doing. But that's another story for another time. And they decided then to add a poker column, a Scrabble column, and a backgammon column. So I got invited, strangely enough, to go to a meeting at the Times. They said, we like what you did for the Independent, why don't you do it for the Times? And now I've been writing for the Times for, I think it's 4.5 or 5 years. And that is every Friday, it's published in the Times. So there you go, that's my life as a columnist. And a lot of those columns then went into the books. Yeah.
Yes, you've written many books. I got your books and it was like a big package arrived on my doorstep. Was the first one an independent view? Was that the first one?
First one was an independent view, which was published just as digital publishing was coming in, but I didn't. I used a traditional publisher. I reproduced a lot of the articles that were written in the early days, which was pre-bots, yeah. And a few years after it being published, I realized there were a lot of mistakes in it. So I edited, and then by then we were into digital publishing. And so whenever there's an error in any of my books, it's now corrected overnight. So you can pretty much accept that what is written is gospel. Yeah.
That's great. That's great. I know a lot of your books have the word wind in it, and there was a story behind that. Do you want to tell the viewers the story about that, please?
Yeah, we can do that one. So the Independent View was an anthology of the early articles, and then I started writing the Independent Weekly, so I had a lot of material. And I wanted a title for the book that was different. And I had a thought, and I'd recently seen a TV documentary It was about a blind boy who was blind from birth, and how he was educated by people in the sighted world, teaching him how the world worked and what was going on. And there was a whole hour, and it was incredibly sort of fascinating as to how to instruct someone who is blind from birth into the ways of the world, because you have no idea if they understand the concept. And towards the end, the guys were thinking, well, we've done really well. This child now understands a lot about the world. And then just at the end, the child says, so what color is the wind? Uh, thus demonstrating you haven't actually taught him everything, and it's incredibly difficult to get that concept over. So the idea behind it was that you can spend hours teaching someone and you think they know and understand what you've taught them, and actually a lot of it has either gone over their head or they've really completely misunderstood it. And that happens with backgammon. You can spend hours teaching someone, you think, by God, they must have got it by now, and they haven't. Yeah. So wind was in the first book, and then I thought, well, we'll keep that as a theme, and we'll have wind farms on the cover of most of them. It's a nice, easy graphic. Yeah.
Yeah.
That was the story. Yeah. But in fact, the most successful one is Backgammon to Win, which is my primer. That was a commissioned piece of work for a publishing house, which I wrote and produced. Actually, two very popular books. Sorry, that's the first one. Sorry, let me get chronologically correct. I was asked to write Backgammon for Dummies, which they'd asked several other people to write, and they hadn't done it, so I did it. The dummy style is very prescriptive. If you've ever read it, gender changes every chapter, and there are things you can say and things you can't say. But that was hugely successful and still is. But I wanted to write the same material in my own prose, so I wrote Backgammon to Win, which is the same material in my own prose, but it also added stuff in that wasn't in dummies. So, and that sells incredibly well, which you can get on Amazon and through my website.
And now you have them. So like for my book, I did it through Amazon Publishing. So people just order from Amazon and they print on demand. You do something similar, right?
Yeah, so lulu.com is the equivalent of Amazon Publishing. Yeah, it was there long before Amazon Publishing came along. If I ever needed to switch, if Lulu went bust, I'd switch to Amazon, but it's easy. It's incredibly easy to self-publish a book. And if you are writing on a limited spectrum of interest, then self-publishing is really the only way to go. It's the only way you'll make any money out of it.
Right. And if people would like to order your books, how would they do that? Is that through your website?
So I'd prefer you went through my website because I get more commission that way, which we'll look at the website maybe in a minute or two. But you can order it on Amazon, you can order it through Barnes and Noble. Any main book distributor will be able to sell it to you. Yeah.
Okay. Well, let me pull that up since you mentioned it. Are you able to see that now?
Yeah, so the website was created as a marketing vehicle for the books initially, but I added a load of stuff on there. So that's Backgammon to Win. There you go. That's the latest version, April 2018. Yeah.
Backgammon in the Wind.
Wind of Change.
Wind of Change, Wind Assisted,
Yeah,
Second Wind. What color is the wind? This is the first one. Okay.
yeah.
And the Independent View.
And then Backgammon for Dummies, which I can't sell you, but they can sell you. But
Right, right.
you can get that on Amazon.
So you just click on these and you can order it.
You click
Okay.
on the book and it will take you to the website to purchase.
And then maybe going through the rest of the tabs on here, you have some reviews about the book. So
Yeah.
we'll let people go through and read these, but some outstanding players have written some reviews. And then this is an interesting one we'll talk about more shortly. Position of the day. Tell us about the history of that now that you're concluding this.
Well, again, I record positions on a daily basis. I have thousands of positions categorized into different types. And what I wanted was to capture people's attention while hopefully selling a few books, but with the idea of educating people as well. So I just take one of these positions and I've got enough to last me for the rest of my lifetime and probably my next lifetime as well. And some of them are easy and some of them are difficult. Yeah. Um, and some of the explanations are short and some of them are long. And I did this for 12 years. And as you can see there, after 2,832 positions over 12 years, it's time for a change. So we're now going to switch to position of the week. So I'll be doing one position per week with a rather longer explanation. So it's like a newspaper article.
Yeah.
I'm actually taking 3 weeks, a month off at the moment for house renovation, and that will start on
Yes.
November the 1st. Yeah.
Good, good. And then
One review that isn't on there, interestingly, is I had lunch with Kent Goulding and Louis De Jong a couple of weeks ago. Now, for those who don't know him, Louis was the um, Master of Ceremonies at Monte Carlo for, I don't know, 20 years maybe. He was a runner-up in the World Championship in 1975. I think it's 75, but you can look it up on the web. To Carol Crawford, he can still at the age of 88 show you the position where he missed a two-shot to win the World Championship. Yeah. But the interesting thing was, and Kent I've known for quite a long time, and but he said, I got a phone call from Mike Senkovitz the other day. He said, have you seen these win books? Yeah. He said, they're fantastic. In fact, I'm sending them by courier to you to read. I thought that was the nicest testament I've ever had to my writing, yeah, given that Senkovitz has been around for God knows probably more years than I have. Yeah.
yes, very long, very long.
Yeah.
Very good. And so then the
Yeah.
next one is the to which
Yeah.
you
So
give lectures and
I
seminars.
give lectures. So during COVID, I did a lot of lectures for free. I put them on my website. You can find them on YouTube by searching for Chris Bray. There's some historic videos which are somewhat older. Um, I do tuition largely online now. I switched to online during COVID and I found it far more effective. Um, the management of time is much better doing it online. I do corporate events for Alexandra Llewellyn, who makes the best backgammon boards in the world, probably also the most expensive backgammon boards in the world. But they are beautiful things. And I do stuff with her quite often, and I will run corporate events for people. Corporate events are interesting because you get people who think they can play and they come along and yeah, they can play, but they don't really know what they're doing. But they have a lot of fun, right? And we do a bit of history and we get them playing in pairs, or we create a chouette, and it's largely an evening of fun. Yeah.
Yes. So very good. So that's wonderful. I find that teaching on these types of calls is really useful because you could use XG, you can record it, you
Yeah.
can transcribe everything. There's some of those videos you mentioned. I wanted to share your YouTube page. Are you
Yeah.
able to see this now?
Yeah.
So there are a number of them here, and I actually did a video myself on doubling decisions in a 5-point match, and I reviewed as much as I could, on the internet and in books, and a lot of it was actually based upon what you discussed in this video, Guide to Doubling.
Yeah. And I will add more stuff over the next year or so. There's a Cotswold lecture up there. I do a Cotswold lecture every February, so there'll be another one in 2025. And sometimes they're very deep backgammon, sometimes they're just a bit of fun. Right? And the other one on there, Monte Carlo 1985, is a TV program, which was probably the last mainstream TV program made on backgammon. Yeah.
Wow, wow, fantastic. So
So it's
this is
got
outstanding.
Mike Swobodny. Mike Swobodny had won it the year before, so he was
Right.
throughout, right?
Yeah. Okay, let's see. What else do we have? Um, okay, and then there was a position. So one of the things people really enjoy about these videos is when we show positions, especially from experts like yourself here. So I pulled one up here. Here we go. Are you able to see that position
Yeah,
now?
I'm good.
Okay. So this I've gotten feedback from viewers that this is one of the viewers' favorite parts of these interview videos because you can kind of learn. And this happens to be your very final position of the day. So uh, I'll just introduce it. This is essentially a 3-point match, 4-4 to 7, and the cube is on white side, bearing off on the right, and red has a 2-1 to play with two back checkers on the other side and a solid 5 prime, and a number of white's blots scattered over the board. So please tell us your thought process through the decision making on the move here, please.
Yeah, so I mean, you look at this position, you give this to someone not really as a problem, but just say, what would you play here? And about 99 out of 100 people will say, well, we'll play 24, 22, 8 to 7. I'll pick up my dice and on we go, right? But the essence of any backgammon position is to try and understand what you're trying to do and what your game plan is. The race is fairly equal, but you've given the cube away, so you can't win with the cube. White has got 3 loose checkers, and you need, if you can, to put pressure on those checkers. And playing 24, 22, 8 to 7 makes it much easier for white to play next time because he'll just probably safety the block that's on his 16 point, your 9 point, and maybe do something with one of the others. If you leave the checker on the 22 point and the checker on the 24 point, you're going to have more numbers that hit one of the white checkers if it can't be safetied. To counterbalance that, you run the risk of being blitzed. And obviously white has 12 checkers in the zone and can execute a blitz and win a gammon. But winning a gammon at this score is not nearly as good as winning a gammon in a sort of 0-0 to 11 score because you don't get full value for the gammon. So it's not an easy decision, and I can't remember the exact analysis, but playing 24, 22, 8 to 7 probably won't get you excommunicated from your backgammon community. But to optimize your winning chances, you need to keep the back checkers separated, and you just leave them. You leave the goalkeeper on the 24 point as a last resort in case the checker on the 22 point is pointed on. You've still got a chance to make the ace point and win from there. And simply playing 8 to 5 is the best move. But without XG, you wouldn't know that. So if you go back to my days at the Double Fives Club, everyone would have played 24, 22, 8 to 7. You wouldn't have known you could possibly have even made a mistake, right? It's only because you've got computer tools that can look at this position in depth and do calculations that you cannot do, that you could even come up with the play 8 to 5. Yeah.
Right. So this is the XG analysis here. 8 to 5 is the top play. I didn't roll it out, but this
Yeah.
is the plus plus. And then where is it making
24,
the
22,
anchor?
8 to 7 is the 5th best play.
Right.
It technically XG would not classify that as an error. It would classify it as a small mistake. Yeah. And as I said, you wouldn't know you'd even made a mistake. But top level backgammon is about not making any mistakes as far as possible. So,
Right. Minimizing the number and the
yeah.
magnitude of the
And
error.
understanding the game plan. And virtually everyone would get this wrong. So it's a demonstration of the complexity of backgammon. Yeah.
It is.
I'll
It is
probably
one.
write, I'm going to write this up for an article for the Times because I will publish it's my final position of the day.
Very good. Very good.
Yeah.
And I find personally, if you don't understand the position, one of the good ways to learn is to modify the position and create variants. So let's see, I created a variant here where I move this checker here to here, and you still don't want to anchor.
You don't, but it's now getting a lot closer because basically White's probably going to be able to play safe next time by
Yeah,
safetying the loose block. So if 8 to 5 is right, it's going to be right by probably even less. Yeah.
it's close. Okay, and then this variant where I brought this checker here, Now the blot's been consolidated and there are two blots remaining, and now he can attack with a little bit more impunity. So it
Yeah.
becomes more urgent to make that anchor.
And if you did the analysis, you'd find that most of white's, well, because white's numbers are diversified now. So the vast majority of white's numbers will now play well. So it's not worth the risk of playing 8 to 5. Yeah. And you have
Right.
to play from the 22 anchor. But if you gave me those three positions as an exam in a month's time, I may get it wrong. Yeah. Because, well, I won't because we've had this interview, but you know, it shows just how difficult the game is. And Magriel used to have great fun changing one a position by one pit and getting a hugely different answer because of that change by one pit. Yeah. So,
Yes, yes. So that
it
was
demonstrates the complexity and the beauty of backgammon. Yeah.
it does. It does.
Yeah.
The other thing that you have
Mhm.
done for a very long time, this has been for the USBGF, the United States Backgammon Federation, is the Bray's learning curve. Are you able to see this now?
Yeah, I can see this. Yeah.
Okay, please tell us about this.
So basically, I got asked by USBGF to do something, and we decided that we would set a puzzle each week. But we'd split it into groups. So we'd do beginners, intermediates, and
Uh,
experts. And
Oh yeah,
I
here.
tried to write the analysis for that type of student. Yeah. So the writing is slightly different depending on the audience. So we had basic beginners for a while, but I exhausted that topic pretty quickly. So we now just have the three areas, experts, intermediates, and beginners. And we mix it with cube decisions and play decisions and match play decisions and money play decisions. Um, Again, it's really just trying to promote the game of backgammon by providing interesting examples that people can learn from. Yeah. So,
And this is a fantastic way to learn, and it's available to
yeah,
USBGF members. I'm on the board of
yeah.
directors of the USBGF, so I try to recommend that to people to become a member. You get a lot of benefits like this and many others, and you don't necessarily have to live in the United States to be a member.
No,
So,
and the position is published every Monday, and the solution is published every Tuesday. I've just written today's solution, and that'll be up on the website tomorrow, so you can go. Actually, this interview won't go out live, so you'll have to look at it historically. But yeah, every Monday with a solution, every Tuesday. A few 100 words, maybe 150 words, try and point you in the right direction. The other thing I would say, which we perhaps haven't covered because we covered my books, but there are a certain number of books that every aspiring backgammon player should read. Yeah.
let's talk about that. What are the books that you recommend?
So, number one on my list by a country mile is Dirk Schieman's To Hit or Not to Hit, which is the most recent book published. I have learned a huge amount from that. It teaches you about specific positions, but it also teaches you how to think. Yeah. And the most important thing about gammon is being taught how to think properly and not waste time. The other books that I recommend are Michihito Kageyama's three books, but particularly the third one, Back Checker Strategy. So after I read Back Checker Strategy, I keep an analysis of my PR, and that dropped my PR about 0.4 over the course of a year. Yeah, so that's a huge improvement. Francois Tardier's book, which was published this year, also very good. And then there's a certain amount of grunt work you have to do. So you have to read Trice's Backgammon book camp, and you have to spend time learning the racing formulae. I can't remember all of it. I've got about there's the recent book by Moshi and
Mark Olson
Mark Olson,
and
yeah,
Alec Barr.
which is also worth reading. I've got a top 12 of books that I maintain. Yeah, so if people ask me what to read, I send out the list, and there are 12 books that I say are fundamental. I mean, Magriel's book is on there, and you don't have to read that, but as part of history, he was the first person to explain how backgammon actually works. So, but even if you read it only from a historical perspective, it's pretty much a must read. Yeah.
Yes, yes, I'm also well read in Backgammon, and that was one of the first books I read. Backgammon by Paul Magriel. Read many by the prolific authors, Bill Roberti and Kit Woolsey. I've had them on the channel before and spoken to
Yeah.
them. And
In
Michi,
fact, sorry, go
yes,
on.
go ahead, please.
Bill's three books on the opening are also on the list. Yeah.
Though
If
those
you
are
can't play the
fantastic.
opening, if you can't play the opening, you might as well not play the middle game or the ending. Right.
So I'll tell you a funny story about that. I wrote so when I was writing my book, people told me I should write a book because they liked how I analyzed the positions. So I decided to write a book on back games because there were really no other books written about back games. So I did that. But it turns out a lot of people don't know this. Before that, I had actually written a not formally published book on opening games. Um, so I showed it to a friend of mine. You may know him, Patrick Gibson in Los Angeles. He's been directing tournaments for many decades. And I had finished that before Bill Roberti's recent 3-volume series came. And I showed Patrick Bill Roberti's book, and I said, Bill Roberti plagiarized my book.
Mhm.
But his was much more in depth, so I never like formally published that one because most of the stuff was in that book, and that one's really dense. But I really do like Michi's books because they're very easy to read.
Yeah,
Uh,
and they're really good for people who are not experts, right?
yeah,
Um, and in fact, I'm now one of the reasons for not doing position of the day is I'm going to write Backgammon a guide to doubling, which is not for experts. It's for beginners and intermediates because people at that level really don't understand what they're trying to do. That's no criticism of them. They haven't had the time or the application, but we need an easy guide for people that don't want equities thrown at them. Yeah.
right. I remember I read a book a long time ago, I believe, by a gentleman named Peter Bell about the
Oh,
doubling cube. You
yes.
you remember that one?
I do. I put a black cross on it because there are so many errors in it. It's
Yeah,
unbelievable. Yeah,
yeah.
he tried his best, but he was trying before the bots had come along, and many of the concepts in that book are incorrect. Yeah. In the
I
same
remember.
way that Berkeley Cook's
Right.
Paradoxes of Probabilities, which was, I read that and I played like that, and I took years to unlearn it. Yeah. But there are 168 problems in the book, and 84 of them are wrong.
Wow. Wow. I remember he used instead of the term market loser, he used cash crasher in
Uh,
in that book. But it sounds like your book may be similar to Mark Olson's book, Cube Like a Boss.
no, Cube Like a Boss is one level higher, if you like. It's written, he makes an assumption about the intelligence of the people that he's writing for. I'm trying to do that without doing that. Yeah.
So
So,
you're doing it for more for beginner levels
yeah,
or novice.
absolutely. Yeah.
So that's fantastic. And I don't know if you're aware, but I had the privilege of proofreading Dirk Schieman's recent book on hitting, and he's working on a second volume. So I would agree with you that that's fantastic.
Yeah, in fact, I communicated with Dirk and sent him a couple of positions a couple of nights ago, and he said he's not really far on volume two, which is a great shame because the first one was fantastic. So he
It,
needs to get on with it. So don't disturb him.
it's a lot of work writing an entire book on, one theme. Your books are obviously outstanding, but a lot of them are kind of compilations of,
Yeah.
articles that
Oh,
you've written, so
yeah.
you could do that. But you want to be thorough in a book, so it's just really time consuming. I remember I told someone it took me 3 months to write my book, and
Yeah.
he thought that was fast. I guess it was. But it took me like 6 months to proofread it.
Well, I mean, Dirk's book is, I don't know who assisted him on the English, I can't remember, but the prose is fantastic. I found only, I think, three typos in the book, which for someone who's German writing in English and expressing ideas was fantastic. They got obviously corrected. I just think it's an outstanding piece of work. Yeah.
It is, it is.
Introducing concepts that people may not know about.
I also think that his first book is like way ahead of its time because nowadays, like I've read it multiple times and it does take multiple times to read it, called The Theory of Backgammon for those who are not familiar with it, but it's very technical and very math oriented, and a lot of people don't want to do the work. But when you're talking to the top players in the world, this is how they think. They think like how he writes. Like,
Yeah, I think it's a great book. I think you need a maths degree if you're really going to enjoy it and understand it. Seriously, um, I loved it, but again, it took me a long time to read. Most backgammon books I read two, three, four, five times. I haven't done my second reader Dirks yet. I know I should do that, but it is heavy going. Yeah. But
what I would do,
it's a brilliant piece of prose that will stand the test of time. Yeah.
right, right. I would read a chapter and just read that chapter multiple times to
Yeah.
understand
Yeah.
it. I spoke with Neil Kazaros one time, and he said he he did the work on all that stuff like 40 years ago, but never published a book on it.
I played in Chouettes with Kazaros 45 years ago. Yeah.
Yeah.
When he used to visit London. Yeah.
Oh, did he?
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay, yeah. I see him in LA. He won the most recent Los Angeles tournament. He used to live in Los Angeles for a period of time.
Yeah. I took lessons from Magriel. I've done it all.
Really?
Yeah.
Great. You've had a wonderful career. It's been such a pleasure listening to all of your stories. Is there any final story or any other comments you'd like to state before we conclude the video?
Well, as we record this, we're 4 days away from playing USA versus UK for the Magriel Cup. I think last year the UK lost 68 to 70. So we're hoping to improve on that. But both teams are very strong. But back to your earlier point, we want younger players to be representing both sides. You know, last year I played a match against Kit Woolsey, and the total PR for the two of us was about 2.5. I think it was speed gammon as well. But our joint age was over 150, so we do need younger players coming into the game, and I would encourage everybody to teach their kids and their friends. But I don't know what the ultimate answer to that problem is. Yeah.
I feel like now with the internet, or maybe not, we have a lot of top players that are really young. Like in the UK, you have Oliver Squire. In North America, there's Ryan Ribello. In Europe, Zdenek Ziska, and many others.
Yeah, but they're the exceptions that prove the rule, unfortunately, Alex. Yeah.
Right.
If there were 30 names you could reel off, I'd be a lot happier. I mean, we've got Oliver and we've got Reese Hodges, yeah.
Reese Hodges, that's right.
Yeah, but there are so those two stand way above any of their peers. Yeah. That's the issue. Give me another 40 Hodges and Squires, and I'd be happy that the UK game had a strong future, but we haven't got them at the moment.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. So you mentioned the Magriel Cup. For the viewers who are not familiar with that is, can you please tell us?
Yeah, so many years ago, the first ever recorded backgammon match was between the UK and the US, where Walter Cook and his son, whose name is going to come to me in a minute, played against Joe Dwett and Philip Martin, and that was the first ever match where the moves were recorded and became the source of the book Championship Backgammon by Walter Cook. But sorry, Barclay Cook and his son Walter. That's where I went wrong.
Okay.
So we wanted to reproduce some of that because it was the 50th anniversary a year or so ago. So it was in fact 1973. So last year was the 50th anniversary. So it's an online match between 12 players from the UK and the US. There are 4 formats: consulting doubles, normal backgammon, speed gammon, and double match point. Number of points spread over the 2 evenings that it will be played. And say there's about 150 points on offer, and may the best team win. Both teams were very strong last year. The PRs were all pretty low. The question is, can we lower them this year? Have we got any better? We'll have to wait and see. Yeah.
That's
And hopefully, positions from that will appear online. It's all being streamed, by the way.
Yes, I saw a lot of those streams last year, and I think I did a couple of positions, maybe one with Tim Cross and one with Matt Congeyer from the event. Um, that's fantastic. I know there are people that are, working on selecting the teams. If you were in charge of selecting the team, what would be the top criteria that you would use?
Oh, if you weren't going to win this sort of match in the modern world, unfortunately, you're going to have people with low PRs. Sociability and stuff is all very good when you're playing live backgammon, but here we're looking for people who can play the best backgammon. So there's been, I think, on both sides. I'm not sure. Certainly, the UK, six of us were picked automatically, and six. A number of people played off for the other six places. I think the US did the same. Yeah. And that was done on the same system that will be used to score in the actual match. You get 2 points for a win and 1 point for winning the PR. So it's a bit like the um, Backgammon Galaxy UBC Ultimate Backgammon Championship. So it is recognised that on a short match, luck will play a significant factor, and that's an attempt to reduce the luck factor in the scoring. Yeah,
You make the PR a component of the
yeah,
points, and
yeah.
in the UBC, it's 1 point for a win and 1 point for the
Yeah,
PR.
it's not quite so draconian. We get 2 points for a win and one for the PR in the Magriel Cup.
I'm kind of on the other side. Like I was speaking with Mochi, and I said, if you really want to find the best player in the world, which is kind of what the goal is for the UBC, is only get points for PR. He said that's good, but that's too nerdy.
It is a bit, it is a bit nerdy, and also it gets rid of the pressure that you feel when the score is important. So you can't do that.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Well, very good. Thank you very much to my good
Okay.
friend Chris Bray. It's been such a pleasure speaking with you and hearing your stories, going through positions, and so much more. Uh, you're certainly welcome to come back at your convenience. But for the time being, we'll go ahead and conclude the video. Thank you for joining me, Chris. I look forward to seeing you again soon, and hopefully I'll have the privilege of meeting you in person one day. I feel like the COVID pandemic has created all these video conferences, and creating this channel is giving me the opportunity to meet people all around the world, such as yourself and others that I would otherwise not have had the opportunity to do so.
Yeah,
So,
well, Candace keeps inviting me to California, so maybe one day I'll make it.
you mentioned that Dirk Sheeman is coming
He is, yeah.
this year, this winter, and I don't know if I could say this, but I spoke with my friend Dan Rovera, whom you know, and he said he may be able to make it too.
Yeah, I've got to play him in a match in a couple of days' time.
Very good, very good. Best wishes and good luck. We'll go ahead and conclude the video. Thank you to the viewers for watching. I hope you enjoyed this video. Please like and subscribe, and you'll be notified every time I upload a new video. Let me know what you think in the comments below, what you'd like to see in future videos, and I'll work on it. With the membership feature, you can get exclusive access to the most popular videos. Again, my book, Backgammon, Backgame Strategies, is available. There's a link in the description to where you can get them, and I'll put links to where you can get Chris's books. If you're interested in lessons from me, I'll put my email address in the description, and I'll put a link to Chris's website if you're interested in lessons from him. I look forward to seeing you in future videos, and until then, keep rolling your dice.